Hello, Emma, and welcome back. For those that might have missed previous episode, Emma is the former Data Protection Commissioner of the Channel Island, and now she is the Chief Commissioner for the DMC. Our career has followed different paths that somehow have led us into this profession. For me, at least, I came across GDPR almost by mistake and fell in love with it. And that's why I started my business, and that's why I'm here today. But I have to say, it's not been an easy journey. As a profession, we face many challenges, which is what I want to talk to you about today. And the main challenge that I come across is the resistance to the regulation from businesses, from people, which in my opinion is due to lack of understanding it. Because when they do understand, and I see that in my training, when I deliver my training and the pin drops, all of a sudden they get it and straight away they are on board. But recently, I've also noticed that more and more organizations of all sizes are starting to embrace it, and they're starting to see the benefit of it, and they're coming round to the idea. And to be honest with you, this type of resistance, I think, is expected because it's part of change. When GDPR came out, was a change and still is. And it is human nature to resist change to start with. And so there is that element of communication, and there is that element of awareness that will then bring people around. And all of people in our space, we tend to do that. But for me, the challenge that really frustrates me the most is people or consultants from other industries, in particularly HR, advising on GDPR when it is not the area of expertise, and therefore inevitably the advice and guidance that they give, it's incorrect, so they are doing a disservice to the client. They create policies or privacy notices that are not fit for purpose, or they're just, a templates used everywhere the same, which is not. They use consent for everything, even when it's not applicable, and really treating GDPR as a second-class citizen and making it into an afterthought, which actually it's not right, because it should be an integral part of the organization. So the lack of respect, I guess, for our profession, our knowledge and expertise, that is the biggest and most frustrating challenge for me. How about you, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I was a wry smile or two in listening to that. You're right. I think there is a lack of engagement, a lack of willingness to proactively and constructively engage with data governance more broadly. But I do think that there are things that we could have done in this community, and I include government and regulators in this, is that I don't know if you remember, but the build up to GDPR, which seems a lifetime ago now, there was this obsession with cookies and consent. So everyone sort of was racing, well, to the bottom really, and you get these ridiculous emails saying, we need your consent now. And you know what? No wonder people got turned off from it, because that's GDPR came to mean in people's minds ridiculous consent and cookie banners, whatever. The cookie issue is a whole nother podcast for you, Christina. But I think in terms of, again, we talk about the data protection and privacy bubble. Inside of that, we get this, right? We get it, we feel it, we want to do well, we're passionate about what we do. But outside of it, people see GDPR as just red tape, bureaucratic, as stifling innovation, anti-innovation, anti-AI, anti-everything. So we've got a choice, right? We can either say, oh, that's just very ignorant of them and frustrated with them. We can wring our hands at people not caring like we do. Or we can say, okay, let's just take a moment. Why are they thinking that? And what can we do to change their minds? So I'm not saying you can fix it all, but let's start to think about, can you imagine if in the build up to GDPR, we'd been talking less about consent and cookies and more about fundamental democratic rights, fundamental human rights, fundamental rule of law, human values. If that had been the conversation in the build up to GDPR, I think the world would have engaged differently. So we need to start framing this differently ourselves. You're right. I think that the enlightened organizations / those organizations that have had a problem, because they're the ones that are converted the quickest, are starting to see this as a market differentiator. So because citizens actually do care, they're hoodwinked a lot of the time into handing over data. They don't understand the data harms because they're so opaque. But once you pick up the bonnet and people look at what's happening, there is generally horror. It's like, you do that with my data, you have this, you have that, that people don't expect that to happen. So people do care. So you see some of the big tech guys now maneuvering to sort of a air quotes privacy friendly position. Now, again, you can have a view on that, but nonetheless, it's an important observation that from a marketing perspective, they are starting to understand that this is something people care about. So this is tapping into what they think their consumers want. Now, it would have been nice if they tapped into that just because it's the right thing to do, but market pressures, right? So the more we can engage with the public about why it matters that they inform themselves of what's happening, the more pressure we're going to put on those big tech, especially, to respond to that public pressure. So I think what we need to aim for is a virtuous circle where citizens are engaged beyond bits of law, to engaging with the concept, the reason the law is here, why it matters, and importantly, what our world would look like if we didn't have it. What would our environment, that we're so lucky we live in democracies, most of us, that we sort of forget how fragile and how important that is in our lives. But we forget that stuff at our peril. So we need to remind ourselves how lucky we are, but we need to work at it. We need to keep that energy and that momentum going. But importantly, I think we need to expand it beyond our lovely data protection bubble to get that virtuous circle moving. Because I think once that's in place, it will run by its own momentum, because businesses will be building this stuff in from the outset because they recognize it. At the minute, it's a bolt-on. They build a product, they build some tech, they build whatever, and then say, oh, right, what about the data? Yeah. And that's not good enough, because you can't retrofit this stuff. Well, you can't retrofit it in a way that's going to be meaningful, in my view.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's really interesting because I've just taken on a new client, and she's a photographer, and she primarily specializes in kids photography, so early years photography. But she's come to me not as a reaction, but because she wants to embrace GDPR and wants to make it part of her USP. And so that is so refreshing. She's so excited about it. We've even discussed about creating a privacy notice that can go on her website, that it's very child friendly, with a lot of creativity in it, with a lot of images. Yeah, of course, the parents are going to read, it's not the child, but if the privacy notice got some children's motif to it, like a fairy tale kind of look and feel, the parents will engage much more with that, and will also, again, give the underlined message that my client is a child-friendly photographer. So GDPR is part of your USP, and it should be part of your USP. I always stress with any clients, new or old, where I say that GDPR will enable you to achieve a high performance culture, which will then help to grow your business. And when they understand and accept that, all of a sudden they're on board. You say the message needs to be wider, needs to be beyond our community, and it needs to be not necessarily about the details of the law, but about what it does, why it's there, and what, if it wasn't there, what would be the consequences.
I think you need to give a shout out to that photographer, and you need to get her on the podcast, because I love that. Those stories are just music to my ears, because that's what we need to aim for in the SMEs and the middle and the huge guys as well. Once we get that, then job done, right, Christina?
Yes, my job is done. So no, and I was so surprised because, she's a small business. You wouldn't expect that from such a small business, such a maturity. And so when she just said, yeah, I want to work with you, Christine, I was so, so excited about it, and I still am.
Great story.
Emma, thank you again for joining me today. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Christina. Lovely to join you.